It's your boy Elder TikTok. There was just a gunshot at Charlie Kirk. We're in
If there's one digital artifact that sums up the absurdity of our current moment better than anything, it might be this video.
It's your boy Elder TikTok. There was just a gunfire.
Here we have an active shooter situation, a moment of utter chaos and terror, and the first thing our boy Elder TikTok does is whip out his phone and capitalize on the moment to plug his personal brand.
Charlie Kirk, Elder TikTok, Mormon Central, Utah. Hey, Jesus is Lord.
When you think about it, this guy's response to the shooting is perfectly understandable in the context of modern politics. It's a reflection of the profound lack of agency many of us feel upon being thrown into a world of violence, greed, corruption, and exploitation with no obvious recourse. Shortly after Kirk was shot, graphic video of the incident went viral and was seen by millions, most of whom I think never wanted to see it. Those like me who managed to avoid the video are nonetheless bombarded with images of brutality in the form of live-streamed genocide, mass starvation, and the brutalization of our neighbors by ICE, to the point that we've become desensitized. The speed and intensity with which we see images of atrocity and violence is unprecedented and can bring up a lot of emotions: grief, anger, helplessness, anxiety, fear, loneliness. Our response to the overwhelming chaos generally is to accept our supposed powerlessness and turn our attention to the one thing we feel we can control: ourselves. We seek individual solutions to individual problems rather than addressing the problems at the root. We might, for instance, seek to cure our anxiety through substance abuse. We might pacify our helplessness with mindless consumption. We might direct our fear and anger against ourselves and each other. We might seek to answer loneliness in the vapid companionship of generative AI. On the right, grifters and opportunists capitalize on these emotions by providing scapegoats: immigrants, trans people, the CCP, Antifa, and countless other manufactured threats. To be sure, there is some truth to their derision towards the media, big pharma, and the powerful people running the show. But of course, they never reckon with actually understanding, much less solving, these issues. And on the left, as Byung-Chul Han writes, we are not inclined to revolution so much as depression. We have been so thoroughly crushed by decades of repression and neoliberal policy like union busting that our will to fight largely lies dormant. We watch the relentless rise of fascism from the glow of our screens, thinking someone ought to do something about this, and then scroll on. We speak in hushed tones about the revolution, scared that if we scream, it might damage our personal brand. We don't dare relax. We don't dare make room for stillness. Our rest becomes absorbed into capital and turned into a commodity. We don't contemplate and we don't linger. Rather, we fill our time with distraction, scared of what might pop into our minds should we have truly free time. We are increasingly desperately alone, isolated in online echo chambers and spiraling deeper into the state of polarization that certain liberals told us Charlie Kirk was trying to bridge. In the aftermath of Charlie Kirk's assassination, I noticed the pit in my stomach grow larger than it's ever been. It was a feeling of dread, even despair, caused by the overwhelming vitriol with which right-wingers immediately declared war on the left.
We are going to channel all of the anger that we have over the organized campaign that led to this assassination to uproot and dismantle these terrorist networks. The organized doxing campaigns, the organized riots, the organized street violence, the organized campaigns of dehumanization, vilification, posting people's addresses, combining that with messaging that's designed to trigger and incite violence, and the actual organized cells that carry out and facilitate the violence. It is a vast domestic terror movement. And with God as my witness, we are going to use every resource we have at the Department of Justice, Homeland Security, and throughout this government to identify, disrupt, dismantle, and destroy these networks and make America safe again for the American people. It will happen, and we will do it in Charlie's name.
Now, if you've been paying attention, this war isn't anything new. See Project Esther. But still, the brazenness of it all is scary and chilling. This latest news only added to the fire hose of fear that the collapse of society as we know it is just around the corner. Compounding all this dread was the fact that we have built a society that doesn't allow room to breathe, where the pressure to perform and self-optimize doesn't allow space for fear to turn into effective action against the oppressor. So rather than organize and build power, we whip out our phones to make something of ourselves with little regard for others.
Make sure you subscribe to Elder TikTok on Instagram.
Han writes, quote, "The compulsion to be active, the acceleration of life, turns out to be an efficient means of rule. If revolution is inconceivable today, that may be because we don't have the time to think. Without time, without catching a deep breath, the same continues. The free spirit perishes. Despite all my musings about contemplation and mindfulness, I am certainly not immune to these tendencies of breathlessness, hyperactivity, and self-optimization. But every now and then something, a work of art, a conversation, an experience in nature, reminds me of the importance of stillness. This time, it was the 2019 film Sound of Metal. We'll get to it shortly. This video is about stillness and the power that awaits those who wait. It's about the importance of real rest as a means of rejuvenation so that you can survive to fight another day. It's about granting yourself permission to grieve, permission to rest, and permission to be radically inactive. It's a call to inaction, because only with periods of inactivity can we find the space for actually effective action. Hello, coming to you from the editing table. Now, I want to be clear up front that I'm not implying that rest and inactivity on their own are enough to fight fascism. Obviously, we need much more organizing, mutual aid, protest, direct action, etc. But in moments of immense suffering like this, it's easy to apply capitalist logic of self-exploitation and ignoring your own needs because others have it worse than you. This, I think, more often than not, leads to withdrawal, burnout, and isolation, which stands in direct opposition to the lasting change that we want. This burnout essentially is what happened to me recently, but I managed to recognize it and find a better balance, which in turn gave me more energy to devote to resisting. I think Lao Tzu said it better than I ever could when he said that when nothing is done, nothing is left undone. This is also known as Wu Wei, or effortless action, a central tenet of Taoist philosophy which emphasizes harmony with nature. Harmony with nature, as you will find out in this video, is also a key pillar of my philosophy for being in the world. Primed by experiences in nature, yes, but also a minor obsession I had with the unsung heroes of ecology, fungi. Unfortunately, fungi have been traditionally overlooked in policy and popular culture for the heroes they are. But that's all starting to change, and a big advocate for this change are my friends at Planet Wild, whose recent project aims to officially protect the world's fungi and, by extension, all ecosystems. If you don't know Planet Wild, they are a community-based nature protection organization. Each month, their community funds a project aimed at protecting and restoring nature. Think of it as crowdfunding for nature. All of their projects are video documented, so you can see your impact through YouTube videos, such as this one, which gives a great intro into how vital fungi are to all life, and what Planet Wild is doing about it. In a world full of problems, Planet Wild offers real solutions and gives people much-needed hope that a better world is possible. It's why I became a member. If you also want to be a part of the solution, consider joining Planet Wild at whatever monthly amount feels right for you. Every dollar counts in protecting nature. As a special gift, the first 100 people that sign up using my code, WeTell10, will get a free first month on me. You're welcome. Just scan this QR code or click the link in the description, and don't worry, you can cancel anytime. If you want to see Planet Wild in action, check out their video on fungi. Thank you to Planet Wild for the wonderful work that you do and for partnering with me on this video. As some of you know, I have had this YouTube channel for 1.5 years. I've sacrificed a lot to spend as much time on it as I have, and while I don't necessarily regret it, I do feel that at times I have lost the plot, that I have focused too much on the ends and not the means. Let me explain. A few weekends ago, just after the Kirk killing, I had one of the worst bouts of writer's block that I've had in a long while. I had Friday off work, and I was excited, because that meant I got to spend 3 whole days doing what I actually love. writing. But for the life of me, I couldn't bring myself to write a single sentence. Every time I started, I would take one look at what came out the other end and delete it immediately. I would end up taking a break and distracting myself, then get mad at myself for being so unproductive. I would exercise not for the sake of it, but to see if it might spark some thoughts, and still nothing came up. By the time Sunday came around, I was feeling down and anxious. Although I didn't know it at the time, a big part of this came from following the news and the general state of the world. This, by the way, was happening as ICE operations in Chicago were ramping up, and I was also juggling activism work and a new job. Not to mention, I've been spending the past several months researching just how powerful and sociopathic Silicon Valley ghouls are, and the dark future that they're trying to build, so I don't think that helped anything. I decided to do some handwritten journaling, a habit that I have fallen out of lately, and I could muster just one paragraph, which I'll read some of for you right now. Why is writing not fun anymore? I have plenty to write about, just no willpower to do it. What happened to the spark? Eventually, I decided to call the day a wash and instead engage in some things that bring me comfort. I watched movies, I read, I went for a walk, I listened to music. It was altogether a completely unproductive, inactive, and lazy day. I wasn't watching anything I planned to make a video about, and I had no purpose other than the utter inability to be productive. But by the end of the day, I felt as good as I had in weeks. Now, let's be clear about a couple things. One, this isn't about me, obviously. I bring up this story not to vent about my problems, but because I think almost everyone is feeling some kind of burnout and exhaustion caused by the overwhelming drive to constantly achieve and improve themselves. My struggle with writer's block was individualized and turned into anger against myself, when really it was the product of a system that fed me horrible news all day and told me that I needed to shove the resulting feelings down and continue working. And second, I want to recognize that it's a privilege to spend even one day doing absolutely nothing. Many people in this country and around the world have to work constantly just to make enough money to survive. This is a massive problem because everybody deserves time to rest and simply enjoy living, to do things for the sake of them and not for the sake of achieving some end. This sort of inactivity, Byung-Chul Han says in Vida Contemplativa, is the very basis of culture. He writes, quote, "Culture is formed by diversion, excess, and detour. It is not produced by following the path that leads straight to the goal. The essence at the core of culture is ornamentation. Culture sits beyond functionality and usefulness. The ornamental dimension, emancipated from any goal or use, is how life insists that it is more than survival. Capitalism turns culture into a commodity. Priceless works of art are hoarded as investments. They don't even decorate the homes of the ultra-wealthy. They sit in climate-controlled warehouses with cutting-edge security technology. In one such facility, known as a free port, in Geneva, over 1.2 million works of art are nothing more than tax-free commodities. The Geneva Freeport houses works from the likes of Leonardo da Vinci and over 1,000 Picassos. Writing for the BBC, Will Gompertz describes it as the greatest art collection that no one can see. He writes, quote, "Those Picassos might never come out, remaining boxed up in a cold corner as they shift from one owner's capital assets balance sheet to another's. We can argue all day long about the meaning of art, but surely it isn't that." Literature, music, and film are similarly commodified, stemming from what French writer Michel Butor called a crisis in communication. He writes, quote, "For 10 or 20 years, almost nothing has happened in literature. There is a flood of publications, but intellectual stasis. The cause is a crisis of communication. The new means of communication are admirable, but they produce enormous noise." Creatives today, most of the time, have to rely on themselves to market, brand, and promote their work. As a result, being creative as a career more and more relies on business and marketing savvy and less on creative talent. Writers need to know how to grow their Substack list. Artists need to know how to leverage TikTok to get their work in front of eyeballs. Journalists have to stand out in a sea of news. The flood of information is drowning both artists and consumers, overwhelmed with noise. What's frustrating is that even though we are still required to be unique and self-promote, stories that break the mold or music that is bold and daring rarely get the green light from risk-averse decision makers. Instead of actually making something new and fresh, the corporations with resources to create big cultural products have begun to rely on tricks and gimmicks to get people's money. They reboot and spin-off and adapt and cross over. They resurrect beloved franchises that focus groups said they wanted, and then shove them down our throats until nobody cares anymore. Nowadays, creativity is less important than a valuable IP. Art is less important than analytics. Is it any wonder, then, that fatigue has become such a common word to describe the cultural response to everything becoming a franchise, a cinematic universe? We are exhausted by a film industry that gives us the same thing over and over again, and then wonders why nobody goes to the movies anymore. We live in an age, in the words of Guy Debord, of frequently recurring festivities that knows nothing of real festivals. This is because time itself has been commodified. The festivals Debord yearns for were festive not because of their spectacle or their consumption, quite the opposite. They were festive because they allowed community members to, quote, join together in the luxurious expenditure of life. Something he says is, quote, impossible for a society that lacks both community and luxury. Luxury, in his definition, is not a Prada bag or a fancy hotel. Rather, luxury is a leisurely stroll. Debord says that our modern, vulgarized pseudo-festivals are parodies of real dialogue and gift-giving. They lead to nothing but disillusionments. Now, I love a good festival, and I wasn't alive during the Renaissance, so I can't speak to that. But I have noticed, even in the short time that I have been alive, the damage that corporate monopolization does to a festival's community, to the extent that it has one. And if I'm honest with myself, the festivals that I've experienced, from music fests to Mardi Gras to parades to holidays to sporting events, have rarely centered the contemplative and communal passage of time that Debord says gives festivals their radiance. Community may be hard to come by these days, but it can be found in resistance, and it can be found in art. The modern artist is in a precarious place, pressured to bow to a system of short-term profit over long-term artistic fulfillment. New forms of exploitation emerge with the rise of generative AI, not because it's capable of replacing art, but because it's cheaper and often seen as good enough by decision makers. Tech journalist Brian Merchant writes, quote, creative workers aren't typically worried that AI systems are so good that they'll be rendered obsolete as artists, or that AI-generated art will be better than theirs. Their fear is that clients, managers, and even consumers will deem AI art good enough, as the companies that produce it push down their wages and corrode their ability to make a living. Now, don't get me wrong, the state of art is definitely depressing, and I worry about most artists being able to financially support themselves in ways that they used to. I don't want to hand wave away that very real loss of livelihood and meaningful work. But generative AI is the symptom, not the disease. The disease is an economic model that rewards greed and exploitation. The rise of AI and the corporate goons so eager to implement it, to quote a freelance illustrator profiled in Merchant's piece, exposed a whole lot of people who hate me and everything I am for reasons I can't fathom. They want to exploit me and see me eradicated at the same time. The creation and enjoyment of art, however, can provide repose from such forces. Art always has and always will prevail against capitalist incentives towards creative stagnation and reproduction of the same. Art is where we turn to make sense of the world and express the inexpressible, to process grief and joy and love and fear and change. Art will conquer hyperactivity every time, because good art integrates stillness into its DNA. The space in between my clapping is emptiness. This is how Japanese director Hayao Miyazaki chose to explain what film critic Roger Ebert described as gratuitous motion in his films. Ebert explained the phrase, saying, quote, instead of every movement being dictated by the story, sometimes people will just sit for a moment, or they will sigh, or look in a running stream, or do something extra, not to advance the story, but only to give the sense of time and place and who they are. These moments of what Byung-Chul Han might call ceremonious inactivity, of doing something to no end, are what makes Miyazaki's films feel authentic. Miyazaki explains, quote, if you just have non-stop action with no breathing space at all, it's just busyness. But if you take a moment, then the tension building in the film can grow into a wider dimension. Films that know how to leverage emptiness and silence, that aren't afraid to let a shot linger or follow their characters through routine activities, are the ones that stick with me. This is also what some filmmakers, or perhaps more accurately the executives calling the shots, don't understand. Action does not necessarily hold attention. Miyazaki says, quote, "Just because it's 80% intense all the time doesn't mean the kids are going to bless you with their concentration. What really matters is the underlying emotions, that you never let go of those." Miyazaki's films accomplish this brilliantly, but they are also a very specific type of film in which stillness and contemplation are often the point. But action movies, thrillers, comedies, horror films, sci-fi epics, they all benefit from giving space to breathe and sit in the character's emotions or build tension. Doing this not only adds authenticity and life to the film, but it also makes moments of action or intensity all the more powerful. Celine Sciamma's Portrait of a Lady on Fire has virtually no music. The film's rhythm and musicality are driven not by music, but by dialogue, stillness, and romantic tension. The lack of music in the film allows other aspects to shine: the acting, the direction, the writing, the cinematography. And when music does come in, it carries with it the weight of earned emotions being built up and released. This is the power of emptiness. Miyazaki's films feel so full of life and meaning because he allows them to live as organic beings. Pamela Gossin writes that, quote, "Miyazaki has learned to accept a certain organic messiness and to trust the creativity of his unconscious mind, which he describes as existing somewhere in the imaginative space above his head, so that he can experience being made by his film, rather than the other way around." Miyazaki and his team accomplish this by creating the world of the film first, through study of plants, talking to children, and drawing their way through the story before adding any dialogue. Perhaps the best example in Miyazaki's catalog of gratuitous motion is My Neighbor Totoro, a film that feels beautifully purposeless. It follows two sisters, Mei and Satsuki, and their childhood adventures. Nothing really happens in the film, and yet it exudes happiness as we are transported into the minds and imaginations of these children. I think the reason the film is so beloved is because we all long to be back in that headspace of play, wonder, and liberation from in order to. And the film allows us to vicariously do just that. Han writes in Vita Contemplativa, quote, "We owe true happiness to the useless and purposeless, to what is intentionally convoluted, what is unproductive, indirect, exuberant, superfluous, to beautiful forms and gestures that have no use and serve no purpose." Unlike many Western kids' films, there's no moral or lesson in My Neighbor Totoro. There's no hero's journey or quippy one-liners. There's no exposition. The movie feels completely aimless. As with any Miyazaki film, he does not impose views or values upon his audience. He does not need to. Gossin writes, quote, "His films are a natural part of who he is, what he thinks, believes, and breathes." Miyazaki's other films certainly have a more structured story, but it never feels like he's trying to tell you anything. You can certainly take lessons from No Face's journey in Spirited Away or the Forest Spirits in Princess Mononoke, but there's a sense in which whatever the films are trying to tell you comes from the character's movement through a real lived-in world. One lesson I do take from Miyazaki is that an environment of stillness and emptiness creates the space in which to actually bring something of value into the world. Gilles Deleuze writes in Negotiations, quote, "So it's not a problem of getting people to express themselves, but of providing little gaps of solitude and silence in which they might eventually find something to say. Repressive forces don't stop people from expressing themselves, but rather force them to express themselves. What a relief to have nothing to say, the right to say nothing, because only then is there the chance of framing the rare and even rarer thing that might be worth saying." Stillness and emptiness are almost always the cure to my writer's block. I always want to find the thing worth saying in my videos, but it seems that often in grasping for the words that will express this thing, it grows further out of my reach. Only when I liberate my hands from this grasping do the words come to me effortlessly. To quote Lao Tzu, "When nothing is done, nothing is left undone." So I started a version of this script last November, but for whatever reason it felt like something was missing, so I never saw it through. That something I now know was Sound of Metal. What this film gets a lot of love for, and rightfully so, is its sound design. Because the film follows a metal drummer who loses his hearing, the sound has to tell a story of its own. Early in the film, this is accomplished through perspective shifts, from an objective lens with full sound
he's having trouble even communicating with me,
to the main character Ruben's subjective, muffled, and degraded hearing. How they accomplished all of this is pretty interesting. I would recommend checking out Thomas Flight's video on the film, which some of my analysis draws from. The filmmakers actually went so far as to mic up the inside of the body of Riz Ahmed, the actor who plays Ruben, to get his body sounds, his heartbeat, stomach rumbling, etc.
Which is gross and weird and kind of awesome.
Later, when he enters the deaf community, although we switch to mostly full objective sound, there's also very little dialogue and virtually no music. So the little sounds of cloth and hands touching and birds chirping have to be just right and balanced. The sound design in this film accomplishes the same ends as Miyazaki's use of gratuitous motion. It creates space for us to sit in the character's emotions, to allow us to feel what he would be feeling as his hearing slips away. Take these two scenes of his morning routine, before and after losing his hearing. The subtleties and detail of the sound in the first morning call attention to its lack when the sound is muffled the following day. The absence of sound in this film accomplishes as much as its presence. Although Sound of Metal is certainly more traditionally structured than a Miyazaki film, it creates a similar sense of authenticity due to the richness and specificity of the deaf community, a culture which most people will never experience.
I think hearing people don't really understand that this it goes way beyond the actual physical condition of deafness. It's a distinct culture, and in that, and under the umbrella of deaf culture, there's many subcultures.
In this interview, director Darius Martyr notes that he was impressed by how present deaf actors were on set, how connected they were to each other.
I don't think you'll ever be around a group of people that are better listeners than deaf people.
When you're communicating using sign language, you have to be connected. You can't just look at your phone and half listen. You have to be looking at the other person and in that conversation. This sort of meditative presence comes through in the film as Ruben undergoes his slow process of healing. When he first loses his hearing, he is clinging to the past, to the life he had become so accustomed to.
I'm thinking we should still go hit our fucking show in Dayton. Okay, I can fucking watch you for cues. I know it was rocky last time, but we weren't on the same page. Now you know what's up. I can fucking watch you, and I know this shit inside out. Okay, yo, I can fucking make it work until we have enough for surgery. Okay? We're gonna get there. Yo, seriously, we're good to go. Lou.
When he goes deaf, he doesn't just lose his hearing. He loses his outlet for expressing his emotions, his career, and his girlfriend of 4 years. Spoilers ahead for the rest of the film. Sound of Metal treats deafness with a care and nuance that give the film its specificity, but in Ruben's journey of loss, crisis of identity, healing, and acceptance, there's a universal feeling. I don't know how deafness feels, and I likely never will, but I do know how it feels to have the things that gave me life ripped away from me. I have found through my own journey, as Ruben does through his, the simple but profound power of stillness.
I wonder, all these mornings you've been sitting in my study, sitting. Have you had any moments of stillness? Because you're right, Ruben. The world does keep moving. It can be a damn cruel place. But for me, those moments of stillness, that place, that's the kingdom of God. And that place will never abandon you.
The power of stillness is not just a theme of this story. It's also baked into how the story is told. It's used to convey emotions from pain.
Have you thought about using since you lost your hearing?
Today is not a good day.
To contentment, to acceptance. Although Ruben finds a level of happiness and community at the deaf rehab, it's not as if a switch flips in his mind and he is healed. It takes time. He still longs for his past, filled with music and the woman he loves. So he decides to get cochlear implants, whose success varies wildly from person to person. In Ruben's case, it produces a metallic and chaotic sound. Especially when there are crowds and overlapping noises. There's a particularly heartbreaking moment when, after traveling to France to see his girlfriend Lou, she and her dad play a duet at a party. The song begins from an objective perspective, but slowly transitions into Ruben's perspective, warping the beautiful music into a garbled mix of unpleasant sounds. At least until he talks to Lou later that night. In their past life of trailers and noise punk, Lou was perhaps equally broken, and their relationship, though clearly filled with love, was also codependent.
Stuck between two worlds. She grew up with a very wealthy, creative father until her mum and dad split up and she was taken away back to America with her mum. She was very mentally ill, and Lou was probably the caretaker in that relationship until she did commit suicide. Then in terms of the relationship with Ruben and Lou, he is taking care of her, but she's also stepping into that caretaker role as well until they're separated, and she realizes she doesn't need to be that. She doesn't need to service anyone like that anymore, just herself.
But that's not to say they weren't exactly what each other needed. In the penultimate scene, they each expressed that they saved each other.
You saved my life. You made it beautiful. It's okay.
Why are you saying this?
You saved my life too, Ruby.
But we see that both characters are more healthy after spending time apart. They needed to let go of their past trauma in order to find happiness in the future. Ruben is a drug addict, having done
Everything.
But Darius Martyr says he is also addicted to pain. Perhaps this is also true for Lou, who has a self-harm compulsion. After her time without Ruben in Paris, we see that the resulting scars are nearly healed. But when Ruben brings up going back on tour, he sees that her habit of scratching at them returns and realizes this isn't what she wants. The next morning, Ruben goes for a walk. As he sits on a park bench, the sounds of the city create an overwhelming cacophony. Ultimately, the film resolves with Ruben deciding that silence is preferable and removing his hearing aids. The film ends with 1 minute and 17 seconds of complete silence. Ruben looks out at the scenes we just saw and heard, children playing, ambulances and cars passing, and a church bell ringing out overhead. Their chaos is replaced by a peaceful, contemplative energy. As with so many scenes in the film, Ruben's face conveys a range of emotions, a touch of sadness and grief, but ultimately relief, contentment, and acceptance. He looks up at sunlight streaming through trees and finds that although a dimension of his senses is gone forever, life is still beautiful in its own right. I feel like Ruben's experience with sound is a metaphor for modern existence. There is chaos and noise all around us, beamed into our brains with unprecedented velocity. It's overwhelming and exhausting, but by quieting our minds, we can experience the nuanced beauty of life. Prior to going deaf, Ruben's drumming offered an outlet for his pain, and I don't by any means want to dismiss the value of expressing your rage in healthy ways. But we also see the compulsion behind his life on the road when he says this.
It's time, okay? It's time. I gotta do something. Right? I'm trying to save my fucking life. So that's what I'm doing. Okay? No one else is gonna save my life. Right? If I just sit here and diddle around, what am I gonna have? Nothing. Okay? And all this shit, like, what does it matter? What does it matter? It just passes.
Ruben, in this moment, is ironically not deaf, but blind to the richness of the life he built in the deaf community. He is obsessed and narrow-minded in his determination to bring back the life he's lost. It's an intensely relatable feeling for me, and I'm guessing many of you, about the struggle to adjust to major changes or losses in our lives. Sound of Metal is about letting go of the past and accepting our lack of control over the future. It's about finding that everything we need is in the present moment, and that we don't need to achieve anything in order for our life to be meaningful and valuable. Zen Buddhist monk Thich Nhat Hanh says this beautifully in his book Silence, quote, "All the wonders of life are already here. They're calling you. If you can listen to them, you will be able to stop running. What you need, what we all need, is silence. Stop the noise in your mind in order for the wondrous sounds of life to be heard. Then you can begin to live your life authentically and deeply." The power of silence is too often overlooked in modernity, and through the metaphor of sound, through the radiance of the deaf community, Sound of Metal shows a deep appreciation for the value of presence. It rejects the idea that the transience of life is something to fear.
It just passes. It just fucking passes.
As expressed in the song of Lorenzo de Medici, quote, "How beautiful the spring of life, and how quickly it vanishes." Since I've come back to the US, time has been hard to come by. On top of the channel, I started a new job, I got more involved in my community, and I started considering a career in journalism, meaning I've been reading and writing more than ever. None of this I'm complaining about, mind you. I mean, the job I could do without, but everything else is important to me. Regardless, the time that I used to spend on things like meditating, reading for pleasure, and socializing became absorbed into work. Even of the last 10 books I've read, all but one I read either explicitly for research or with the thought that I would eventually use the book in a video. And that includes fiction, by the way. Part of the reason why I've struggled so much to find balance in this new phase of my life is that I truly love doing the work of making videos. I love researching, I love writing, I love learning, I love sharing what I learn, I love challenging myself, I love the art and creativity in video editing. There's a lot that I don't love about it. The marketing, the inherent individualism of content creation, the fact that I operate on a monopolized platform run by an evil company who takes most of the money I generate. I could go on. But when I compare it to previous jobs I've had, it is so much more enriching and stimulating and meaningful. This is why I feel an almost unstoppable drive to devote all my free time to the project. I want to get to a place where this is all my working time, and then perhaps enjoy the luxury of a balanced life. That is the power of neoliberalism, where the possibilities are endless and we are free to do anything we want, at least anything that falls within the bounds of economic productivity. This positive power, as Byung-Chul Han calls it, ironically makes us even better at generating wealth for the rulers. As Han says, the achievement subject is faster and more efficient than the obedient subject. All of this limitless possibility leads to a sometimes subconscious philosophy that the ends justify the means, which makes it easy to neglect the aspects of life that give it its radiance. When we neglect these things, family, community, reflection, mindfulness, friendship, repose, love, etc., we are not only feeding the capitalist beast, but we are missing out on the very purpose of life. We aren't here to achieve some objective at any cost. We aren't here to build as fast and efficient as possible. The logic of the ends justifying the means is a capitalist trap that leads to nothing but burnout. Kelly Hayes and Mariam Kaba write about organizer burnout in Let This Radicalize You, quote, As we struggle to maintain balance in our lives with what the work demands of us, we must ask ourselves whether the manner in which we organize reflects the world we want to build. Community organizers devote massive amounts of time and energy to the work, and that is fantastic. But the ends of a world free of exploitation do not justify the means of self-exploitation often used to get there. Meaningful work is enriching and rewarding, but when the struggle feels like life and death, it can create environments where we sacrifice everything to devote ourselves to the fight. If not balanced with rest, such breathless activity ironically ends up playing right into the hands of the rulers by causing burnout, dejection, and despair. It causes us to give up on the outward fight in favor of an inward one. Because our freedom to do is limitless, our time to be shrinks. We rarely engage in gratuitous motion. We rarely allow the space for emptiness and silence. Instead, we fill our lives with consumer goods, immediacy, and superficiality. And what do these leave us with besides exhaustion? Byung-Chul Han says that in this burnout society, we have no time or energy to rage against the machine. Quote, "The general distraction affecting contemporary society does not allow the emphasis and energy of rage to arise. Rage is the capacity to interrupt a given state and make a new state begin. Today, it is yielding more and more to offense or annoyance, having a beef, which proves incapable of effecting decisive change. We need time. We need time to rest, to heal, to exist, to think, to revolt, to find companionship, to connect with community, to engage with our neighbors. The cruelty of this system is that it robs us of the very thing that would threaten the status quo. Time. That's what's so pernicious about modern society. We're made to think that if we are not being productive with our time, we are failures. If we're not monetizing our hobbies and interests, what's the point of doing them?
I want to figure out how to make money out of this thing. It's simply too good.
Doing nothing, therefore, can be a radical act. The Dalai Lama famously said that on normal days, he meditates for 1 hour. But on extremely busy days, he meditates for 2 hours. I know that we're all busy and tired, that's part of the problem, but when you make time for stillness and contemplation, you'll find that the rest of your life opens up in ways you might not imagine. This is something I've had to remind myself time and time again. After moving back to Chicago, I fell out of the habit of making time to just sit and absorb, and I didn't realize until recently that this is part of what made me vulnerable to constant anxiety. It crept in slowly and then all at once. With it came the utter inability to focus or find joy in the things that brought me life. Luckily, I was able to recognize this pattern based on past experiences, and since I've reinstated my daily meditation practice, things come to me more easily. In talking with others, I get the impression that most of us are experiencing some level of anxiety, exhaustion, and/or frustration. Stillness is not going to cure all that, but it can create space for something truly revolutionary to take shape. Since this video was about the importance of stillness, I'd like to bring back something I used to do at the end of my videos, a mindful pause. All you have to do is, when I say, pause the video and sit with whatever you're feeling at the moment, for however long you want. There's no right or wrong way to do this, just being present and not immediately looking for the next distraction is enough. All right, ready? Pausing in 3, 2, 1. I hope that little moment of respite did something for you in these crazy times. If anything came to mind that you'd like to share in the comments, I'd love to read it. If you enjoyed this video, please consider becoming a paid subscriber on Patreon or Substack. Direct viewer funding is one way that we can begin to break the power of platform monopolies, especially in this new era of weaponized censorship. I'm not kidding myself about being a target quite yet, but it's not unthinkable that leftist creators could soon be targeted, seeing that being anti-capitalist now is enough to get you designated as a terrorist. Yikes. Over on Patreon, you can see the interview that I just did with Brian Merchant about the Luddite uprising and how it applies to the modern big tech landscape. So that's going to be in my next video, but if you want a little sneak preview, go check it out. Finally, I'm going to start doing some live streams coming up. You can see I've got the webcam there. I did one a few weeks ago, and now I actually have the required software, so I think it'll be a little smoother next time. I might even try to live stream my next interview, so stay tuned for that. I don't know. We'll see. And don't forget to check out Planet Wild for your first free month. Just scan this QR code or click the link in the description. If you want to see Planet Wild in action, check out their project Protecting Fungi. All right, y'all, that's going to do it for me. Peace and love, and I'll see you next time.